Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News on the South Florida Conservative website. It is Tuesday, May 20th, around 1 p.m. And we're going to talk about the lack of and possible way to refine the United States intelligence. And you would say, well, we don't really need that because it's just a wonderful thing. And it's not really a wonderful thing at all. So let's discuss what came up recently that would make us want to do that among all the other things that have gone on. If you remember, I guess it was 3 or 4 days ago, Marco Rubio came out and said in a press conference that he did not trust the intelligence assessment regarding Tren de Aragua because the intelligence assessment said that Tren de Aragua had no connection with the Maduro government in Venezuela. After he said that, anybody with a brain looked up the topic and found out why, yes, it is true. They do have ties to it. And Tulsi Gabbard turned around and fired 2 people from intelligence who were pushing that angle. The reason that they were pushing that angle, we can't say it was this issue, but if it were to come back to the Supreme Court of the United States that Tren de Aragua was not actually the foot soldiers of the Venezuelan government, Donald Trump would not be able to turn around and throw them out of the country quite as fast. So you would have to say to yourself, boy, these guys just never learn, do they? And you would be right. So you have to say to yourself, what is it that we're going to be doing to restore the American public's honest trust in our intelligence system? Sounds crazy to even talk about it like that, but we're going to have to. And unfortunately, my prompt just went down. So give me 30 seconds while we try to figure out what the hell just happened here. Okay, I've got it back. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take the curtain back, power, politics, and the puppet masters that have been running this country through the intelligence networks for quite some time. Those of you who are JFK assassin fans, yeah, those guys, they're the ones we're talking about. For those of you who are Donald Trump fans, yeah, the intelligence letter, those guys, that's who we're talking about. All right. So this hits us at the very heart of the republic, and that's the intelligence sources that we are using, the people that are culling the information that makes the executive branch do what it does best. Do we go to war? Do we do peace? What do we do? Okay. And it's not the kind you find in books, but rather the kind that's supposed to keep our nation safe. Okay. Except now it's clear the intelligence apparatus may be working for itself, not the people. That's why I bring up this particular case, because it's so flagrantly out there in the open. All right. No shadows at all on that one. It's time to streamline the U.S. intelligence services and return it to civilian control, not to control the unelected bureaucrats, not the cocktail circuit around Langley or everybody who went to Princeton or Yale or wherever they get these guys from, or the war rooms in Northern Virginia, but control by the people through the officials they elect. Okay. So let's start with what I had already mentioned. Tren de Aragua. It's a violent criminal syndicate that started in Venezuela and is active right now in the United States, among other places. And this is what made the story so just plain stupid, is they've been creating mayhem in South America for quite some time now. So anybody who could speak Spanish already knew these guys were bad news. All right. So the reports came out, as we said, the Marco Rubio's office, which is the State Department, disagreed with the intelligence assessment to downplay the threat of the cartel. That divergence tells you everything. Rubio, who speaks Spanish, who deals with Spanish-speaking people, knows career intelligence officials are more concerned with preserving their old paradigms than facing the realities here. And they don't like certain things going the way they were going. And who knows who got in whose ear, right? But to try to force a situation that would affect Supreme Court judgment on the deportation of foreigners, that's crazy, right? They'd rather hunt down the ghosts from the war on terror than confront transnational gangs running drugs and people across our border, among the other things that transnational gangs get up to. Because to admit that would force them to support policies they don't like. And that's border security and deportation of cartel-linked illegals. You don't hear anything about the 17 family members of the Sinaloa cartel that turned themselves into the United States government the other week either, and are giving supposed excellent intelligence on opposition because they fear for their lives, right? We're not hearing anything about that, are we? So imagine a scenario where someone like Tulsi Gabbard brought into a Trump administration, okay, she starts firing entrenched heads of intelligence, not because of politics, but because of performance, which is how these two guys went out. Because they failed, because they've twisted intelligence to push forever wars and bury the truth about real threats. And it sounds far-fetched, but it's not, because it's occurred. I've just explained one of the situations to you. All right. We've already seen this happen in small ways under Trump, with acting DNI, Richard Grenell declassifying materials that expose lies told to the American people during the Russian hoax and the Crossfire Hurricane FISA abuses. So now what Gabbard could do, what a second Trump administration must do, is tear down the walls of secrecy and rebuild an intelligence system that is efficient, honest, and constitutional, which it's pretty much none of the three at this point, okay? The rot in the intelligence community is not just about laziness or bad judgment, it's systemic, okay? In 2020, 51, for those of you who remember, 51 former intelligence officials signed a letter claiming the Hunter Biden laptop had all the classic earmarks of Russian disinformation. And it was a lie. All right. A coordinated deception was used by social media, legacy media, and Democratic operatives to influence a presidential election. It very much made the difference. And now these weren't no-name analysts here. We're talking about former heads of the CIA, the NSA, and DHS. And not one of them has ever seen a day in a courtroom or a jail cell because of it. So you ask yourself, is this still a system we control or one that controls us? And do we want to continue to have a system of that nature, right? More along that line, you say, well, how am I going to be able to get in there? What are we going to be able to do to get this back, this ship straightened out before we turn into the HMS Mexico under the bridge in New York, right? You have to reorganize and consolidate. These are all things that go on in classical intelligence. This is nothing that you wouldn't know or read in a book, all right? But these are how things are done. You reorganize and consolidate, all right? We have 18 intelligence agencies. You slash it. Define who handles what. Create clear lines between domestic and foreign intelligence. For those of you who are aware of them, or now you are aware of them because I'm mentioning it, Britain has the MI5 and the MI6. Whatever the real names are, who knows? The MI5 is everything inside of the country. Every MI6 is everything outside of the country. And that's it, right? Now you need to restore human intelligence. That's the people on the ground. That's the spies spying on the spyable, okay? They resorted to super high-tech, big money-burning projects, the billion-dollar satellites, watching the jungle from 22,000 miles away. You know, while we were doing all this stuff, we didn't have satellites pointed at Central and South America for quite some time, and communism overran any number of these countries. If we had had 6 or 7 guys sitting in a bar somewhere smoking cigarettes, we would have known about it, okay? We don't have operatives in cartel zones. We need eyes and ears embedded and not another PowerPoint at the headquarters. We need to have people on the ground giving us information. They can be snitches, they can be politically driven, they can be, in some situations, even us putting in various reconnaissance forces to do the job. A lot can go on that can make this work right. We've been fighting a lot of low-tech wars with high-tech equipment, and it does not work. It does not work. The the people's grasp of it anymore. The technology will answer all your questions. It's like when they tell you that AI is going to answer all your questions and put all these people out of work. It can't if it's not run correctly and if it's not used. Everything's not square peg round hole. All right. So that's that point of it. Now we need to also end the unconstitutional surveillances that occur. No more spying on Americans without a warrant. And this goes back to the Trump Spygate thing, right? Russiagate. We need a civil liberties inspector general watching the watchers. And this doesn't mean American civil liberties socialist. This means you don't get a FISA warrant because the guy is a Gemini. You have to show me a reason to do it. And I personally would get rid of the entirety of the FISA court. That's just me. But, we can't have things the way we want them. In the old days, if you were suspicious, you would build a case and you would go from there, right? You ever see that on television? That's why everybody hates those kind of shows, because they have a book somewhere from how procedures were done at a certain time period when they were the pros, right? And boom, this is how it was done, blah, blah, blah. And then the guy says, well, I'm in that industry and we don't do it like that anymore. Or this is a textbook version. Try to get close to the textbook. Try not to be the sloppy bastard in the street. You're better off, okay? So while you're out there getting this unconstitutional surveillance removed, you have to purge the political parasites. And that is, as you see with Mr. Comey, who is going to be talking to Secret Service a little more and should probably be talking to a defense attorney, because he should. And I, love or hate what he said, people have been jailed at January 6th for less than what Comey has done. All right. Just throwing that out there to you. Intelligence should serve the Constitution, not the Democratic Party, not the Republican Party. It should serve the Constitution. Fire the ideologues, vet the lifers, go right through there. That's what we have. It's why they call it a lie detector machine. Everybody who works in there needs to get polygraphed. Yes, they do. We don't have to do chemical rendition, but we can most assuredly threaten them with a polygraph. Hey, John, you're kind of a socialist. Your polygraph is scheduled for 3 days from now. If you'd like to retire, you can retire in 2 days. You'll be amazed at how many people won't go on the polygraph, because it's admissible for what they're doing. It's not admissible in courts, but if I'm running a counterintelligence probe into thieves and shitbags and traitors, it's more than enough for you to end up in Leavenworth. Okay? Check it out yourself if you don't believe it. So we got to end the loyalty to the interagency consensus and start demanding loyalty to truth and accountability. I see Kash Patel and Bongino starting to try to do it, but you have to remember they probably do not have control of their agencies yet. They're slowly doing it. There's a lot of criticism that they couldn't give you the information that they wanted to this week, that they're going to have it out in a week or so. It's because they probably do not have full control of their agencies. And they should have moved in there with an enforcement unit day one, kicked this chair out from under some people, and really made a mess. And it would have gone better, which is also why the DOJ is still a total piece of whatever. Okay. Kristi Noem, she didn't have so much of a problem because she was with the hard chargers from the ICE units. They wanted to get stuff done because they were getting their name dragged in the dirt for the last 4 years, that they couldn't do anything to stop something that was not meant to be stopped. All right. Audit everything. Like I always tell them here in my town, when we buy a $750,000 sprinkler system from a guy who lives in my town to fix my freaking tennis court that not everybody uses. Audit everything. Make intelligence failures public, okay? Track every missed call, every falsified claim, every Gulf of Tonkin resolution, just like we track government spending. The IC gets it wrong, they answer to the people, all right? That story that I just told you about Trent Aragua and Mario, somebody other than those two should have gotten fired. Everybody in their office should have gone, all right? And you can see why they do it the wrong way, because they're like, then we won't have anybody left. But I will tell you something, if you've ever worked casino work, if they think there's something going on in the accounting division, They fire everybody. They don't want to get into this he said, she said bullshit of one person. Even if it's not you, you're going. Okay. And Trump should remember that from when he was in the casino business. We don't know who was all stealing, so we'll get rid of all of you. This came up in the that Trader Hansen from the FBI, surprising enough. We kept him alive, right? Forever. And they were said, and they've done this a number of times, and this goes against what was considered old tradecraft. And they'll say, well, what do you know? I can read too. Everybody on here can read a book that is, especially if it's an unimpeachable source, right? Not saying a comic book, manga, things of that nature, actual books, maybe even textbooks from the various academies. And if it tells you right there something, then you can believe it and quote it, right? And that's what we had with Hansen. We knew he was a Russian spy. There was never any doubt once we brought him in what he was, right? So why did they keep him? Well, they were trying to save money because they were like, he would nickel and dime them on different things. All they had to do was sit down. I've said this a million times. Look at everything that he touched since the beginning of time and say that all those things are blown, all those things are compromised. We're shutting all of them down. Don't call anybody up. Cut them all off. And now we have to start again. People don't want to do that because with an entrenched bureaucracy and intelligence, somebody is going to take the L for Hansen being a traitor. It's not going to be him. Whereas they did this, leaving any number of possible other traitors in office, right? Or overseas giving us bad information. That's what I'm saying when it comes to that, okay? And nationalize the mission. No more empire building. No more regime change fantasies. No more Arab Spring. None of that shit. Focus on defending America. Industrial security, cyber defense, cartel suppression, protecting our borders, effing the Chinese every minute of the day when they wake up. There was an excellent speaker who came from, I think it was Penn State or Pitt, one or the other, who told us the numbers, the cash numbers of what the United States loses every year from the effing Chinese doing their nonsense with industrial espionage, and also the amount of money they spend to do it. And then what we spend. And they outgun us incredibly because they're serious about doing their job. We are not serious about doing our job when it comes to protecting the United States. But also because so many of the companies that we are theoretically protecting are also in bed with foreign enemies. But that's a story for another time. So, okay, Eisenhower, one of the few things that he did do was warn you about the military-industrial complex. It grafted the intelligence bureaus onto itself to protect itself by lying to you and calling it classified. But we weren't stupid. People are not stupid. They realize things don't add up. They see things and they say, this isn't correct, but the man in authority says different, right? So the other people at the table will shout you down, but you knew that this was the right thing as far as what you said, that this wasn't right or this was wrong, whatever, okay? Doesn't mean you're wrong. Do the research. Gird yourself for those inevitable conversations, right? Shine a light on the monkeys that are pulling the levers behind the Wizard of Oz. So let's just try to do that. Let's push for this through your elected officials and reclaim the intelligence system and bring it back to the people so that it can provide the level of protection that it should be providing instead of becoming a monster that we all have to fear under our bed. And that's about all. So talk to you later on. Have a good day.